Hi guys, so today I am covering all of the cancelled podcast controversies. Well, not all of them, but all like the prominent big ones. Um, if you are looking at me, you might be like, oh my god, you look a little bit rough to wear. I have got my left wisdom tooth out, so as you can see, I am swollen. As you can see, this is my right jawline. I'm quite swollen on my left. But I started to get a video up for you guys. I actually have 2 videos that I'm filming today. So don't ever say that I'm not committed to giving you guys quality content. Also, please, before we just get into this little PSA, can you even say that? I don't know. Little message. Please subscribe. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subs before July, which is my birthday month. And we are at 900 subscribers as of now, which is crazy. So please sub and leave a like and comment, just for the algorithm. Anyways, let's get into all cancelled podcast controversies. The cancelled podcast consists of Tana Mongeau and Brooke Schofield. Tana has been on the internet for so long. She started off doing like story time videos, and then she kind of just progressed into random, she's just a social media influencer, I'd say. She's not really that active on YouTube as much as I can tell anymore, but she's just quite prominent in the influencer space. And Brooke Schofield, genuinely, I think she's a comedian, but I'm on her Wikipedia page and I can't see anything about that. All it basically says is that she was she appeared in a film, and then she worked as a waitress for 3 years, and she became close friends with Tana Mongeau, and they just started hosting Cancel. Genuinely, her Wikipedia is quite bare, but that I think she's a comedian in my eyes. Before the girls are actually in a podcast together, they were in drama together, which is true friendship if you ask me, and this is the mindgate drama. In 2021 October, Tana was having quite a rough week. This was during her breakup with Mongeau, who is a musician, and he released a song about her, calling her terrible and a terrible girlfriend and all that crap. So Tana and her friends are in a restaurant and they book a semi-private room, and next to them there's a semi-private room as well, and booked for someone else. They don't know who it is. Well, that someone else turns out to be Tana's ex, Mongeau, celebrating the release of his new song about how terrible Tana is. In Tana's own recount at the time, she gives Brooke a false name as to not release her identity, and she calls Brooke Mindy, but I will be referring to Brooke as to not confuse the whole plotline. Tana and her friends all obviously leave the restaurant, and one of the friends that Tana leaves with is called Brooke, which is Brooke Schofield. And Brooke and Tana have been close for a few years at this point, and apparently Tana at this point is even helping managing Brooke's OnlyFans. Then Tana at the time was hooking up with this guy called Jeff. She just gives this guy the name Jeff. This is apparently nothing serious, they're just hooking up and all that jazz. And during this night, Brooke was like, why don't you invite Jeff over? You've just had a rough night at the restaurant, why don't you just invite Jeff over and we can chill? And so Tana did. So they were all hanging out, and then basically at the end of the night, Tana goes to bed, but before that she's like, oh, I haven't said bye to Jeff, and Jeff is the type to always say bye before he leaves. And when she was about to say bye to Jeff, she catches Brooke in a state. So her hair's all messed up, she's got a baggy t-shirt, and she is leaving the movie room. And Tana says that Brooke has never been in the movie room before, but now all of a sudden she's leaving the movie room all messed up. And then Jeff messages Tana being like, come to the movie room. So obviously putting 2 and 2 together, you can tell that something happened. Now, Jeff claims that nothing happened, but the next day Tana checks the cameras, and you can't deny live footage. This is Tana's own recount, by the way, and she says that there is clear footage that something happened here. Tana confronts Brooke about this, and obviously there is live footage, and Brooke is denying this. She's like, no, nothing happened. Tana then does a story time, and tells this whole story to her viewers, but instead of calling Brooke Brooke, she calls Brooke Mindy. But obviously people figured out who Mindy was. Now, Brooke came out saying that at that point she did not hook up with Jeff. She was basically like, the footage isn't like real, I didn't hook up with him at that time, but she did say she did actually hook up with him at a later or earlier time during that night, because that night actually Brooke had had a thing going for a girl and she had told Tana beforehand. Then halfway through the night, Tana just disappeared with that girl into Tana's room. So it was kind of like an eye for an eye, I guess, but still a bit weird. But they did end up making up, because obviously who would let a guy or a girl come between a long-time friendship? And after this, they actually ended up releasing the cancelled podcast. I think it was a few years later, maybe like a year or two later actually. The next big drama is the France wine tour drama, and basically in August of 2023, Tana told a story on the cancelled podcast and it was not well received. She openly mocked and criticised a wine tour guide named Cynthia during her trip to France, and Tana and her friends had basically booked the wine tour on a friend's recommendation, but things kind of went crazy and not well when they arrived hungover and unprepared for the entire experience. So what actually happened? Tana and her friends travelled to London to film with Sidemen, who are like a YouTube group, and after they finished their video they decided to make the most of the trip to London and actually explore some of Europe, and this led them to Paris, in France, which France and London aren't actually that far away. We have the Eurotunnel in the UK, if you don't know what that is, and basically it connects France and UK via car, so you can drive to France from the UK, which opens up like most of Europe for you. Wanted to do something fun in France, they booked a wine tour in Champagne, France, which had been recommended to them by a friend who previously had done this wine tour, and they had a really great experience. And the tour was run by Cynthia, who is actually an award-winning wine expert, and she specialises in champagne and basically supporting women in the wine industry. The night before the tour, Tana and her friends went out partying and drinking until 6 a.m. They had barely slept and showed up to the tour completely hungover and unprepared. Tana was already in a bad mood, and this only made things worse as the day went on. The tour was scheduled to start at 8 a.m, which means they had to wake up and head to the Gare de l'Est train station in Paris. I don't know if I pronounced that right, I'm really sorry to all the French speakers, but they were supposed to meet Cynthia at this train station in Paris. Now, at the train station, Cynthia met them at 8 a.m. as planned, and the group then boarded a train that was heading to Dormans, which is a town in the Champagne region of France. Tana has a history of over-exaggerating, and she had claimed that the train ride from Paris to Dormans was 3 hours long, but in reality it's actually only about an hour and 15 minutes. So, she also complained about the lack of food on the train, but the itinerary actually never even promised food. And at this point, Cynthia just began doing her job. She was educating the group about champagne, and she was just explaining the history and the winemaking process. And keep in mind, this tour is educational. This was exactly what was supposed to be going on in this tour. But instead of listening, Tana ignored her. She put her headphones in and tried to sleep. Cynthia, wanting to engage with the group, tapped Tana on the shoulder, and she wanted to talk to her about champagne, which annoyed Tana even more. After arriving in Dormans, the group began walking through vineyards, learning about the winemaking process. Tana was irritated that they had to walk so much, because she had claimed that they walked 7 miles, but the itinerary clearly stated that there would be some walking, so I don't know why she is complaining. Some of her friends had wore heels, despite it clearly being a walking tour. And at one stop, there was a 550 step staircase, which Tana refused to climb, and she kind of mocked Cynthia for being like, oh, we have to climb the staircase, like, which I don't know, I think Cynthia was just doing her job. She did a really good job of staying and keeping her cool, so I'd be pissed off at Tana already. Then Cynthia continued teaching them about the vineyards, the soil, and the harvest process, which was the entire purpose of the tour. And instead of appreciating it, Tana got really more annoyed and she put her headphones in again. And Cynthia obviously was so frustrated with this lack of respect, because who wouldn't be? She asked Tana to take her headphones out because it was rude. This really set Tana off because she could not deal with being told what to do, and she mocked Cynthia for being too talkative, called her like a chatterbox, and complained that she wouldn't stop talking. And later on in the tour, Tana kept trying to leave early. She started contacting like private car services to come pick them up and take them back to Paris. And because during the wine tour you would have a lunch, and there was this lunch resignation at a really nice restaurant, Tana had actually asked Cynthia to cancel it because she was planning to go home earlier. But later Tana had actually changed her mind, and she was like, oh, well, they might as well eat there since they were stuck there. And Cynthia obviously had to be like, oh, but I already cancelled the resignation because you told me to. And this led to an argument. So Tana was yelling at Cynthia, and she was like frustrated that things weren't going her way, which it is a wine tour. I feel like wine tours are quite chill, like they can be a bit boring, but there's not really anything crazy to them. So the fact that this girl was behaving like this at the wine tour is absolutely insane. Like, Tana gets a grip. She dramatically apparently chugged a glass of wine, which manners, and stormed off. Then after the tour, the only way back to Paris was to take a car service provided by the wine cellar. But when Tana got in the car, she completely lost it when Cynthia also got into the car. Tana had acted like really shocked. She was asking why Cynthia was riding with them for 3 hours, but the itinerary clearly stated that Cynthia would accompany them both ways. And Cynthia allegedly made comments about influencers, saying how people in her town hate girls like Tana. And at this point, Tana was fuming. She was believing that Cynthia was attacking her, and she like really over exaggerated this in her podcast. I'm trying to give you the less over exaggerated version, but basically she was trying to make Cynthia seem really rude and unprofessional, when in reality Cynthia was genuinely just doing her job and reacting to the way that Tana was behaving, which Tana was behaving like a toddler. After she got back to the US, obviously, Tana made the podcast episode with Brooke, and she publicly trashed Cynthia. She mocked Cynthia's name. She claimed Cynthia ruined the experience. She encouraged all her fans to dislike Cynthia, and she made fun of Cynthia's job and how she talks. And she joked that if she was with like a different group of friends, that her friends would have fought Cynthia if they were there, which, what the hell? And the worst part of it all was Tana used Cynthia's real name and business name. So she literally kind of doxed Cynthia. And because of this, some of Tana's fans found Cynthia's business online and started leaving negative reviews, which, what the hell? I mean, listening to the story, I am not seeing at all how the hell Cynthia was in the wrong. Then Cynthia files a police report, and Tana actually loses a sponsor. So basically, as the podcast gained more attention, this exact podcast episode of her talking about Cynthia started receiving harassment online, which there's a few crazy fans, I think, of Tana's who would literally go to the ends of the earth just to defend her. And Tana's fans basically spammed Cynthia's business with bad reviews. Some of them even threatened Cynthia, which, what the hell, grow up. And Cynthia was obviously feeling unsafe, as you would, and she filed a police report in Paris. Tana, in the podcast, literally used her Babbel sponsorship to say she wanted to learn Cynthia's language just to tell her to shut the fuck up. So Babbel immediately dropped Tana and released a statement saying that her behaviour went against the company values. At first, to be fair, a lot of Tana's fans thought that the story was funny. But after like the full details like got released, after people went onto like Cynthia's website and had a look like at the wine tour itinerary, they were like, oh, Tana is actually entitled as fuck because the itinerary lists everything, and it literally shows that she signed up for an educational wine tour but got mad that it was educational. And to be fair, I would say that this kind of got Tana cancelled, but Tana has been cancelled so many times. But I do think her reputation took a little bit of a hit because she was kind of on the come up. We thought that we left crazy storytime Tana behind, but no, apparently not. Then, in early December of the same year, the cancelled podcast actually had 2 controversies. The first one had Meghan Trainor involved. And to be honest, it is not a controversy that Tana and Brooke created. If anything, Tana is quite praised, or at least she was quite praised for this video episode at the time. For a little bit of background, you do need to know that Tana and Brooke's podcast is very well received, and unlike other podcasts, they don't rely on celebrities to boost views. They actually kind of suffer views sometimes when they have celebrities on. But with this knowledge, they still decided to have Meghan Trainor and Chris Olsen on. Now, before even appearing on Cancelled, Meghan had already faced quite a little bit of backlash for 2 main reasons. So in a previous podcast, she said, fuck teachers, which angered educators. She later apologised, saying that she supports teachers and didn't mean to offend anyone.
Teachers of TikTok and teachers of the world, I recently said F teachers on a podcast. And it's not how I feel. I was fired up because we were talking about how sending your kid to school here in America is so horrific. And what all of us have to go through, but especially teachers, is not normal and not okay. I had Trisha Paytas on the podcast, and I knew her history with her teachers. And I knew my husband's history with his teachers, and I was bullied by some teachers. So in that moment, I got angry and said, F teachers, F those specific human beings back in the day, but I did not mean that to all teachers. I love teachers. I fight for teachers. I think they have the hardest job, and they are the most underpaid. They're the most unappreciated when they literally raise all of us. I don't want to make excuses. I'm just so sorry. I'm so sorry to any teachers who I make feel bad. And I will remind myself that my words definitely could have a consequence, and I will be more careful. Love you all so much. I'm so sorry again. Thank you all for helping me.
And also her association with Lou Taylor, who Meghan's business manager is Lou Taylor, who was heavily involved in Britney Spears' conservatorship, is that how you say the word? And many people in the Free Britney movement, just like anyone kind of associated with Lou Taylor, so making Meghan controversial by association. So obviously when Meghan was announced to be a cancelled podcast guest, everybody was not really excited to see her. But I think she was actually quite fitting for the podcast because she is cancelled. So I think, I don't know, maybe quite a fitting guest. So from the start of the episode, fans actually noticed that Meghan was acting dismissive towards Brooke. And multiple times Brooke would try to speak and Meghan would cut her off and ignore her completely. And fans pointed out that this actually happens often in guest episodes where guests only really focus on Tana. And apparently the only guest who ever actively included Brooke was Josh Peck, who made an effort to turn his body towards her and engage in conversation. At this time, Tana had recently just started dating Mongeau, who he is from Hawaii, and at the time she was just slowly introducing him to her social media because he's not really an internet personality. And he was off camera during the podcast, but Meghan started yelling his name, trying to force him to come on camera. And Meghan kind of kept calling out to him, making the situation really awkward. And Tana clearly looked a little bit uncomfortable and tried to get Meghan to stop. And Meghan just didn't take the hint and kept insisting that he come out. Now, Tana had actually set a boundary, which go Tana for this. She said that he's not a toy, which I agree.
Gay son, but a thought daughter probably.
Monica? No. Where's the boyfriend?
Makoa.
No,
I don't want to subject you to all this. Well, on the way out, I will introduce you guys, okay?
Tell him
no,
I
on
need
the
him
way
so
out, I'll
bad.
introduce you guys. I don't want to
Tell him
subject
she
him
needs
to all
him
this.
so bad.
No, don't do it. No. He's not a fun toy.
We need to show him.
Women are men, not toys. That's so true.
You're saying his name on the podcast?
No, it's Meghan screaming
I said
it.
it.
Continuing to
I
believe
said
Tell him, no, we'll see him on the way out.
We said it on the last
episode.
You did?
And fans actually praised Tana for standing up to Meghan, calling her behaviour like really immature, which one of the most uncomfortable moments of the podcast happened when Meghan shaded Tana for sleeping in and not being productive. Like, you are on Tana Mongeau's podcast, like shut up. Meghan said that when she wasn't a mother yet, because Meghan Trainor is a mother now, but she was like, oh, when I wasn't a mother, I was just wasting my time sleeping. And she told Tana, you don't have kids, get up and do something. Now, Tana called Meghan out saying, don't you have nannies? She kind of ate Meghan up in that one, I'm not gonna lie, she ate Meghan up. And Meghan admitted that she has nannies from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And it always like bothers me when influencers or like celebrities are like, oh, I'm so productive as a mum. And it's like, yeah, because you have nannies, you have help. A lot of women do not have that luxury. And I don't know, it just really bothers me. And this like really like peed me off when I heard this. So that's why I included it in this video. But fans called Meghan out for trying to act like a hardworking, sleep deprived mum when she literally has multiple nannies to take care of her kids. And obviously, like, people like Meghan is out of touch and hypocritical for making that comment towards Tana. Now, it gets weirder. Near the end of the episode, Meghan randomly asks Tana for a kiss. Like, what? And obviously, fans noticed that Tana was a little bit uncomfortable, and people really criticised Meghan for forcing the moment, saying that Tana clearly did not want to give her a kiss. And in the next episode of Cancelled, after the Meghan Trainor episode, Tana and Brooke kind of addressed the drama, but not really. They were just saying that they get a lot of hate every time they bring a guest on, and Brooke admitted that they're overhearing it, but fans just don't like guest episodes. So I don't know, I feel like this is quite I explained the reason I included this controversy, and it's genuinely because I hate the way that Meghan Trainor just talked about mothers. And I'm happy that Tana like kind of snapped back at her. I didn't want this whole video to be like negative towards a cancelled podcast. I did want there to still be like positive controversies, if you can even have positive controversies. But this is one of the things that like a lot of people called out, not the podcast itself, but just Meghan Trainor, who was a guest on the podcast. And the next drama is actually kind of similar, because the next controversy is the Matt Rife drama. At the time, Matt Rife had gotten cancelled in general for making a poor taste domestic abuse joke. And yep, in the year 2023, we were still making domestic abuse jokes. Wow.
I've only been to Baltimore one time. I ate lunch there, and the hostess who like seats you at the restaurant had a black eye. A full black eye. And it wasn't like, what happened? It was pretty obvious what happened. And we couldn't get over the fact that we were like, this is the face of the company? Like, this is what you have greeting people? And my boy who I was with was like, yeah, I feel bad for her, man. I feel like they should put her in the kitchen or something where nobody has to see her face, you know? And I was like, yeah, but I feel like if she could cook, she wouldn't have that black eye. So, just wanted to see. I figured we start the show with domestic violence. The rest of the show should be pretty smooth sailing after that. Yeah, of course I felt bad for her, man. But she should have had her protection crystals.
And this led to Tana and Brooke talking about it in the next episode of their cancelled podcast. So Brooke had actually previously defended Matt Rife, despite his history of making like misogynistic jokes. And she revealed that she had actually dated Matt Rife early in the year, but she had referred to him as DC Guy on the podcast at the time, just to keep his identity private. And even though Matt had a bad reputation, Brooke always just assumed that his behaviour was just his stage persona and that he was very different in private. Tana obviously disagreed, saying that Matt lied to Brooke a lot and got a new girlfriend right after dumping Brooke, despite telling Brooke that he didn't have time for a relationship. Now, at the time, Brooke saw a TikTok from another girl who had dated Matt Rife, posting pictures of them together, and the girl commented that the relationship was from the same time period as Brooke's, meaning Matt was seeing multiple women at the same time. Brooke had messaged the girl, and the girl added her to a group chat with other women who had also been seeing Matt Rife at the same time. Which, oh my god, how does this man have time? In the group chat, the women basically compared timelines of when they were seeing Matt, and they realised that there was a lot of overlap, meaning that Matt was dating multiple women at the same time and lying to all of them. And obviously Brooke at this time felt played, and she was very shocked because she had been one of Matt's biggest defenders, but now she realised that he had actually just been playing her this entire time. And Brooke had said, for a man who claims he doesn't have time, he sure had a lot of time, which honestly I agree. Like, what the hell? It's always the guys that are the busiest that have like the most time, I swear. And Matt actually, whilst secretly seeing multiple other women, was telling Brooke that she couldn't date anyone else. He had told her that, like, I don't want you looking at other guys, you're the only girl I want, I don't even want you hanging out with guy friends. Meanwhile, he was seeing multiple women behind her back. I would like scream this, but like I don't want to take my stitches out. So Brooke admitted that at first she had tried to gaslight herself into thinking that she had misunderstood the relationship, but after scrolling through her old text, she had saw proof that Matt had led her on and manipulated her, and Matt blocked Brooke to hide his lies. So after realizing everything, Brooke had texted Matt to confront him, and instead of replying, Matt just blocked her number. This like really upset Brooke because she had publicly defended him the week before. Like, she was out here like saying like Matt Rife respects women, whilst he had already blocked my number. This infuriated Brooke because she had publicly defended him just a week before, and Tana joked that Matt likely blocked all his exes when he got a new girlfriend so they wouldn't text him and expose him to his new girl. Earlier in the year, Matt actually had another controversy. Honestly, how hard is it to stay out of controversy? And this is honestly such a gross controversy. I will read out what he said in this podcast in a second. But basically, he appeared on the Stiff Socks podcast with Trevor Wallace. And on the podcast, he made extremely offensive comments about women. And I'm not even the type to get upset, but these are just disgusting comments. So he just said his type is blondes with fake boobs, which okay, whatever. But then he made grossest joke, and if you are a girl you will understand that this is like a nasty joke. He said that if a woman has an outie vagina, it looks like God left their tag on, which is so nasty to say. Who the hell is saying that? I'm sorry, but like gross. And if I was seeing a guy like that at the time and he said that on a podcast whilst dating me, because he was actually dating Brooke at the time of the recording of this podcast, and even though this podcast was deleted because obviously the severe backlash forced the podcast to be deleted, she had just seen him the night before the podcast. She knew that she was a complete opposite of the type of woman that he described as his ideal type, and he knew that she would hear the podcast, because why wouldn't you listen to the podcast that your man is filming? And he still said those things. That's just gross. That is so gross.
Sucks. Talk about it before I fucking shit myself on Cancelled.
Matt Rife went on the Stiff Socks podcast with our baby Trevor Wallace.
And I just want to say this is when I knew. But I want my girl to have the floor.
I was still actively seeing him at the time. In fact, we'd gone to dinner the night before. He was telling me all about how he was going on a podcast. I said, oh, I have a podcast. He's like, oh my God, really? Like,
he left your house to go to go to Stiff Socks.
No, I was with him the night before. It doesn't matter. But the point is, I'm like I'm excited to watch it. I'm like, oh, gotta watch my man on a podcast. I don't know if you guys recall. That was like the most. He's since had it wiped from the internet. I wish I could wipe it from my memory.
I'm livid. Like, I'm actually I have to drink this because I'm livid.
He went on the Stiff Socks podcast. First of all, first offense was Trevor asking what his type was. His answer was blondes with fake tits. Okay? For the audio listeners, I am a brunette with fucking real tits. They're huge, but they're real. I'm like huge, by the way, but they're real. So that was like a little bit like offensive. But
when I knew.
But I justified it a little because I'm like, you know what? If someone asked me my type, I'd just say ugly guys. So, like, that's not the worst thing in the world to say. But he goes on to say that he is disgusted by outie vaginas, like girls who have outie vaginas, because it looks like God left the tag on them. Now, I'm going to give you guys the Cancelled exclusive here, but I, Brooke Schofield, have an outie vagina, okay?
Seen it, it's great.
I have a fucking, and so does fucking 2/3 of America, you fucking weirdos.
And the law actually goes deeper with this controversy because Matt was actually a guest on the Cancelled podcast back in June, and he had acted like he barely knew Brooke, even though that they had actually been like romantically involved. And Brooke was just shocked how he treated her on air, pretending they had no history at all. Like she had said in this like expose podcast that they were doing, that she didn't know that he was going to come in and like treat her and act like he didn't know her at all. And after the podcast, Brooke felt really weird and shaken because Matt had just acted like a complete stranger. He just acted like Brooke was a complete stranger. At the time this podcast came out, Matt did have a girlfriend. We don't know how many girlfriends he had, to be fair. He could have multiple, but he had like one main girlfriend, I guess. And she had posted a picture of a full wine glass on her Instagram story the same night all of this drama came out. Fans had speculated that this was her reaction to the controversy and planned that she might have found out about Matt's lies and that she was stressed out by the situation, which honestly everybody would. If I found out that my boyfriend had treated other girls like this and had said those things in the podcast, I'm sorry, but ew, how is this man still dating? Matt actually repeatedly made fun of Brooke's career as like a social media influencer, acting like it wasn't a real job, which is crazy because Matt himself became famous through TikTok and Instagram clips. Like, at least Brooke has a podcast. You literally got famous off of TikTok and Instagram Reels. Like, that's embarrassing. And genuinely, Brooke even said that like Matt acts like he's embarrassed of social media, but it's the only reason that he has a career. And he didn't want to acknowledge that his fan base was mostly women, and instead like acted like he was above social media, which I'm not gonna lie, even if you have a comedy special, if you got like famous off of social media and a lot of people are coming to your shows because of social media, you can't act like you're above social media. Like if you were to stop posting on social media and just do like traditional advertisement or whatever the hell, you would have no fans. And I said what I said because that is the truth. So why act like you're above social media? I don't know. This man is just ew. And many fans literally pointed out that Matt's arrogance and attitude towards women would actually like hurt his career because he has mostly a fan base of women. And yet here he is making misogynistic, nasty jokes. Like, how are women still supporting this guy? And that's kind of all for the Matt Rife drama. Like, it ended kind of abruptly, although I did feel really bad for Brooke when she was talking about the Matt Rife situation in August of last year, which is 2024. Some crazy drama came out about Brooke and her old tweets. Now, these tweets were actually dated from 2012 to 2015, and they had a lot of like controversial and offensive statements. And this was before Brooke had like a substantial following, before like her TikTok following grew to her 2 million followers that she has now. And I'm not going to read out all the tweets. I will like post a lot of them on the screen right now. But one of the biggest tweets that got her a lot of backlash, and rightly so, is from 2013, where she commented on the killing of Trayvon Martin. And she said, "Guarantee if Zimmerman shot a white guy, this wouldn't even be a story. Newsflash, this wasn't a crime of racism, it was self-defense." And this is quite an insensitive tweet because it just is so dismissive of the racial injustice in Trayvon Martin's case. And she had actually addressed this controversy over a year ago on Reddit, which the tweets always surface on Reddit first and then they kind of like flow into Twitter, and then like from Twitter to Instagram and TikTok, you know, like that's kind of like the pipeline. And in her Reddit post, she basically acknowledged that she had horrible takes as a teenager and she lacked proper understanding. She was influenced by her conservative grandfather who listened to Rush Limbaugh and Fox News constantly, and she regretted not educating herself earlier and now understands how privileged she was to remain uninformed about political issues, and she apologised and took accountability for her past actions. Then after the tweets resurfaced again, Brooke actually addressed them publicly on TikTok, and in her video she confirmed that the tweets were real. She did express disgust and regret over them, and she acknowledged that she grew up in a very conservative household with little exposure to different viewpoints. She explained that she was raised by her grandparents after her parents struggled with addiction, and clarified that she no longer holds those beliefs and has since educated herself. She apologised and she stated that she should have addressed the controversy sooner. Now, Tana is Brooke's co-host, so she has to address these tweets because these do impact the podcast. And she commented, "We grew up bad, I love you, and growth from it is the biggest form of prevailing." But she later actually deleted this comment, and she defended Brooke again, saying she was raised by people with these thoughts. She immediately moved to LA and grew. She's so smart and knows this was wrong. And people brought up Tana's own history of problematic behaviour, arguing that her defense of Brooke was hypocritical, which, if you don't know, Tana had some controversy where she used to say the N-word, so not like Tana's a golden girl in this situation either. And to be fair, the response from her fans was mixed. Some people accepted her apology and they acknowledged growth, and some people used her age at the time, which she was 15 to 18 years old, and a lot of people said that that isn't an excuse, but some people said that that is quite young, that is an excuse. And many fans expressed quite a little bit of disappointment, saying that they were rooting for her but now feel a bit differently. And some believe that she should have apologised sooner rather than waiting until the tweets kind of resurfaced again. At the time, there was speculation that Tana and Brooke were fighting, or that Brooke was removed from the podcast, because in the previous episode, Brooke wasn't present and Tana brought in Paige as a temporary host. I'm pretty sure Paige is Tana's assistant, but please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. And fans speculate that Brooke had been fired or that Tana was distancing herself from the controversy. But Tana actually clarifies that Brooke wasn't kicked off the podcast. She only missed one episode to reflect on the situation. And Tana thought that this was obvious, but admitted that she could have been more clear. And all I was trying to say in that episode was, I'm giving Brooke the week, obviously. But she also admitted that while Brooke was away, she actually recorded another episode with Paige and Amari and chose not to release it because it would have fueled drama that Brooke had been kicked off the podcast. Now, Tana admitted that she was actually shocked and hurt by Brooke's past tweets, and she compared the situation to her own past mistakes, which Tana has a lot of past mistakes, so.
Obviously, as you guys can see, I am alone on this couch. Brooke is not here with us today, and I want to be abundantly clear that that was my decision. We all saw the tweets, and they're fucked up, and they're horrific, and I'm saying that as a white person, right? Like, I cannot even imagine being a black non-fan or fan and reading those tweets. And I've made it very clear to Brooke as well that I condemn her for these tweets, and they're fucking horrible, and I have no right to forgive her as a white person for the things that she said. Before I get into a little more of my thoughts on this, I'm also wrong in this situation, and I want to be open and honest with you guys about that. When Brooke made her first apology video, I commented on it and I said, "We grew up bad, I love you," and immediately regretted it so hard. Realized how fucking stupid it was for me to fucking say that. I'm going to beat myself up for that forever, quite frankly. It's not my place as a white person to forgive her or add to the problem and further the narrative of white people forgiving other white people. And it's not enough to just write these things off as we grew up bad. And I think that I learned that now, and that shows me that I still have things to learn and unlearn. And I just first wanted to apologize to anyone I hurt for commenting that on her video. I might be the last person you guys or anyone wants to hear have a take on Brooke's tweets. I'm not a perfect person, and my hands are not clean in any of this. You guys have known forever about my old tweets that I tweeted in 2013 and 14 and the vines that I were in and the things that I've said, and I've apologized for them a million times, and I'm more than happy to apologize until the day I die. They were hurtful and disgusting and racist, and I know that. While I do think that I've grown so much as a person from who I was in those tweets at that time, I know that there's always more growing for me to do, and that's why I wanted to talk about this today. I felt like if we just started the episode, Paige and I saying hello and welcome back to the Canceled Podcast, that's just exercising my white privilege, and it's not something that I want to do or be any part of, quite frankly. Trayvon Martin tweet in particular, I have never and I will never align with those thoughts and values. I remember when it happened, and it was the murder of an innocent 17-year-old black boy that was committed by someone that he should have been able to trust with his life.
Now, Brooke and Tana obviously came back with a podcast, and in this podcast, Brooke fully acknowledged that her past tweets were horrible. She said that even before the tweets were serviced, she already knew that they were wrong, and she doesn't expect people to believe that she changed, but she insists that she has. She also reiterated her apology, particularly to Black listeners who were hurt by her tweets, and she said that she felt really sick over the fact that they think that this is her character. She promised to continue taking accountability and make sure that her actions reflected her growth. Now, the two actually discuss how the internet reacts to cancellations. People don't just criticize the actual issue, but start attacking every part of the person, like their appearance, their personality, etc. And Brooke made it clear that she doesn't see herself as the victim in the situation. They also admitted that they have contributed to cancel culture themselves by talking about others negatively on their podcast. And Tana recognised that their audience, especially young women and LGBTQ fans, listen to them really closely, and they need to be more mindful of how they discuss people. And Brooke actually mentioned that she felt guilty about the hate Alyssa Violet received after they talked about her in their podcast. Basically, the Alyssa Violet drama was they called out Jason Nash, if I recall it correctly. They called out Jason Nash for always being on TikTok Live, and Alyssa Violet defended him or something like that. And basically, Alyssa Violet received hate because they were like, why are you defending him? Which I'm thinking of making a video on Alyssa Violet because although she isn't big anymore, she has a lot of very weird, controversial views, I think. As in the fact that she's very she's on a massive health kick, which nothing wrong with that, but it's a little bit toxic and I'm finding it a little bit concerning. So let me know if you guys would want that. And they promised to be more careful moving forward and not completely changing the show, but aiming to use their platform a little bit more responsibly. And Tana made it really clear that there's no drama between her and Brooke. They are still best friends. And Brooke reaffirmed that she does not want to brush this under the rug and will continue taking accountability. She understands that not everyone will forgive her, but she hopes people will see her growth over time. And that was kind of it for the Brooke tweets cancellation. Now, recently, Jeffree Star actually went onto the cancelled podcast, and there's not much drama around this. I mean, Jeffree did expose a little bit, but there's nothing crazy that happened in this podcast other than the fact that Tana really, really, really seemed to want Jeffree to like notice her and act like really weird. She was acting really weirdly. She was kind of acting like a pick me, but only towards Jeffree Star, which definitely a choice. But yeah, other than that, I don't see anything controversial in the podcast. I think the most controversial thing about this podcast with Jeffree Star is the fact that it was with Jeffree Star. But that's kind of all the controversies, all the massive controversies that I thought to include. I can obviously make a part 2 if you want to hear about more controversies, but just let me know, like, if you want to hear about the smaller ones. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers before July, my birthday month, and leave a like and comment. And I just hope you have a lovely day, and thank you for watching. Bye bye.